Hi, I'm Nancy Eigelmiller, and I'm the executive director of One in Five. And we're here today with Congressman Jamie Raskin from the state of Maryland, and he is going to be talking to us about his son, Tommy. So, Congressman Raskin, why don't you just tell us a little bit about Tommy?
Thank you for having me, and I'm delighted to be with you, Nancy. Tommy was a remarkably beautiful and compassionate and brilliant young man, and he was a playwright, and he was a poet, and he did stand-up comedy, and he was a second-year student at Harvard Law School when we lost him. He was an essayist, but he had a profound love and compassion for all living things and for humanity. And when he learned about conditions of war or natural disaster or oppression and violence, it hit him very, very hard. He felt it happening as if it were to members of our family. If he saw something like that, it would be with him for days and days, and it would all be about what can we do to stop this.
Your son sounds very similar to my husband. It's somebody with a very big heart, somebody that's really funny, that really connects to other people. And I've really noticed that, especially in men, that's a personality that is very prevalent of people that suffer with a mental illness or die by suicide. Have you noticed that trend?
Well, I hesitate to generalize, but I've certainly heard from a lot of people who've told me that their children, predominantly sons, but also some daughters too, had very similar personalities, in that they were sensitive and funny and warm and loving and sociable people, and they were profoundly affected by pain and suffering in the world. And Tommy was a passionate vegan at the end of his life and hated the idea of animal suffering. But I've heard from other people who lost their kids who told me similar things. And again, I don't know if those are just the people reaching out to me, and it would just be, a proportionate part of a broader population. I don't know, but it's something definitely that has piqued my curiosity too.
Yeah. Something that I think about often. It's that it's very hard for them to live in the world with everything that's going on.
I think that's right, and it's a time of great trauma and loss with COVID, with the opioid crisis, with the mental and emotional health crisis, with gun violence. There's a lot of suffering out there, and there are people who are just uniquely susceptible to it, and they feel others' pain and suffering in a profound way.
Exactly. So as a parent who has a child who lived with a mental illness, what advice do you have for other parents who has a child who has a mental health diagnosis?
I hesitate to put myself in a position of giving advice to people, since I'm not, an expert or a doctor or a psychiatrist and so on. But I guess I would say, in addition to seek all of the professional help that you can find and you can get, and make sure that people are good, the key thing is just to be able to talk about everything. In the book I wrote about my experience, I fault myself for not talking about suicide far more openly and repeatedly. Directly, because it's like not talking to a teenager about sex. You might think by not talking about it somehow you're going to disappear the subject, and you're not. It's quite the reverse. You endow it with a certain kind of power that it shouldn't have.
Yeah, we talk about all the time about normalizing the conversation. It's your brain. Why are we handling it any different than we handle our heart or some other part of our physical body? So the Surgeon General released an advisory at the end of last year that our youth are in a mental health crisis. From a legislative standpoint, what do you think we can do to change the conversation about mental health and mental illness?
Well, I think we need to get people to focus on the fact that we have emergency staffing shortages among behavioral health practitioners. We need to be getting a lot more people going into the field. We need to make the field more sustainable by making sure people are being paid well enough to stay in a very difficult undertaking. And we've just got to get the country to address this severe shortage of mental health specialists. We need to have them in all the schools and all the places where we would find them. And then, of course, we've got to take aim at the things that are making life a lot harder for young people.
So our mission is to prevent suicide by reducing the stigma, and our tagline is to stop the stigma and start the conversation. When Tommy died, you were very open about sharing his story. Can you speak to how you made that decision? Did stigma come into play at all?
You know, the weird thing was that Tommy was regarded in his group of friends at law school as the person that everybody would go to with their problems. And they would confide in him, and he would advise them and, you know, give them help. And so, you know, we were well aware, obviously, of Tommy's struggle with depression, but also what a lot of his friends were going through, both in college and high school and in law school. I think that the problem of stigma, because of the kind of work a lot of people are doing, like you're doing, has gone down. And it's also gone down just because the problems are so pervasive and replete that it's very tough for anybody to feel like they're in some kind of tiny, you know, minority of people who have this problem. I mean, you're really part of, you know, the majority. So in my case, I found it both easy and necessary to talk about it publicly, both because that's kind of my nature and I'm a very extroverted and very public person, but also because that was Tommy's nature. I mean, he was very guarded about talking about his mental health, but he was very open and public about his passions for taking care of people. The note that he left us said, please forgive me my illness one today. Look after each other, the animals, and the global poor for me. All my love, Tommy. And so I think Sarah and I view it as part of our mandate to look after each other and the world, to, you know, share Tommy's love and dreams with anyone interested, and then also to share his fears for where things were going. And I think, you know, he had those fears in common. A lot of young people today, there's a lot of fear and anxiety about climate change and what the future looks like. A lot of young people saying they're not sure if they want to have children to bring into a world of climate change and a world defined by, you know, nightmare tyrants like Vladimir Putin, authoritarians all over the world. You know, these things really weighed him down, and I know that he's not the only one in his generation experiencing these feelings.
Yeah, it's a very heavy time. It's, you know, we've all been impacted over the last 2 years by the pandemic. The mental health of the entire world has been impacted, and it's a heavy time. It's a heavy time, and so a lot of work needs to be done in this space. Well, I'm going to have to wrap it up here, but I want to thank you for being with me today and for talking to us about your son and about mental health and mental wellness. Thank you for all the work that you're doing in this space, and I hope that we can touch base later on at some point.
Please, and Nancy, thank you for all the wonderful work you're doing at 1 in 5 to get everybody to focus on the treatment gap that exists and on what all of us can be doing to make sure that people have access to the emergency resources that they need.
Well, thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.